Good morning, Sean.
Go Berries.
Yeah, I feel like there's a backstory that we need to tell there at some point, but it's maybe more interesting if we don't.
Oh, there's nothing interesting about it. It's more if you don't know, and I just scream random crap. 100%.
Interesting. So, how's your week going so far? I'm going to pretend like we haven't talked.
Good. I think. I don't know. It's a pretty standard week. Can't complain.
It is. It's fun. We have some fun client projects we're working on, so that's always interesting. I think that we should remind everybody that we have an email list that they might want to consider signing up for. We will not. What's that?
I said, "Ooh, tell me more."
We will not bombard them with emails, but
really,
no, we'll just send one out on Monday morning, and it will include resources from the previous week and notes about the upcoming shows.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Where do I sign up?
No, we're going to up our email game a little bit here, not in quantity, but in quality. Sean and I have talked. I've mentioned a couple resources that we were going to provide in an email, and then I dropped the ball on that. So we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. We will be sending those resources out, although they won't coincide with the week of the show, of course, because we're a little bit late getting them. But again, guys, sign up for the email list, ghostcreative.com/live. We'll send resources out for you. It's just a good way to stay connected, know what's going on, know what's coming up on the shows. And get some good resources. We're really hoping that you guys are building your own resource library, and we're hoping that we can be a part of that by providing resources to you. So let's talk about caffeine. Let's talk about caffeine, Sean. And while we're talking about our caffeine, here's what I want you guys to do. If you're listening, throw in the comments are you a coffee or tea drinker, and what are you drinking this morning? I have my Lavazza. It makes me feel like Jerry Seinfeld when I drink Lavazza. So it's fantastic. It's super smooth. Again, Lavazza, I get it at Wegmans. I would highly recommend it.
Hold on. I don't know if I should go here, but it's me, and this is how awkward I am. But
I'll get ready to shut the live off.
I feel like that's a terrible name for something that you want to be consuming. Because what's the name of those, like, you're getting ready to have a baby classes?
Lamaze?
That's what it reminds me of, and I'm like, that's a little off-putting. Sorry, whatever company you are.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you enjoy your coffee.
Now you ruined it for me. Thanks, Sean. Now you ruined it for me.
My week just got significantly better, Joshua.
I
am still drinking my mint green tea straight from Morocco via Trader Joe's.
Thankfully, they import it for you, so you don't have to travel to Morocco, given the COVID situation.
Yeah, it's all because of COVID.
Yes, yeah. So, guys, throw in the comments what you're drinking this morning. I'd love to hear. Always looking for new ideas, even if it's boring. That's okay. We're going to talk today about one of our favorite exercises that we do as a company, and something we think is incredibly important, and a lot of brands are not thinking about it. So, you guys hear us talk about brand all the time. One of the things that's so important for any business is figuring out your positioning. And positioning means, like, where do you stand in the market? Here's what inevitably happens, and I am speaking from experience. You have some idea that you think it's amazing, and you're going to tell the world about your idea, and people are just going to flock to it, right? People are just going to flock to your product. You're actually not going to be able to create enough products to keep in the store because people are going to love this idea so much. Okay. Now, does that happen? Sure. It does happen occasionally. More often than not, what happens is you create some amazing product and you go to sell it, and people are not that interested. Right. And that's just the truth of how a lot of business works. And what we find more often than not, it's because you didn't position your brand well in the market. So we're going to dig in here and talk about brand positioning and how we help companies figure out what their positioning can be. So again, we use the edges exercise. And so let's first start with defining what brand positioning is, because if we're going to tell you how to do it, we should probably talk about what it is. So this is a definition that I like, brand positioning is the act of designing the company's offering and image to occupy a distinctive place in the mind of the target market, a distinctive place in the mind of the target market. And here's what's really important. Better is a trap. Better is subjective and better is hard. So you should strive to be different. So for example, I might love Lavazza coffee and I might tell you that it's better than any other coffee that I've had, but you might try Lavazza coffee and you might hate it. It might be the worst thing that you've ever had, okay? Because better is subjective. Different, on the other hand, you can't argue with. Different is different, period. So the edges exercise is a way that you can visualize the difference that your brand has so you can carve out a unique position in the market. Now, should the quality be high? Sure, the quality should always be high. It's kind of like just the price for entry, but you don't want to start competing on better, okay?
Well, I think one of the greatest examples of this is Southwest Airlines. They, you know, I feel like the airline industry is a very, very hard place to define better because, again, better for me is the cheapest flight possible.
Yes.
Better for you might be like, you know, first class, all the amenities, the way you're treated and the experience you have. Better is so hard to define in the airline industry. However, Southwest Airlines knows that they're different to the point where they're not afraid to tell people like, you know, you're not going to ever enjoy flying with us. Josh, do you want to like dive into that story a little bit more? You know, you can articulate it better than I can.
Yeah, I think we talked about it, but it's worth telling again for anybody that hasn't heard it. So Southwest Airlines, quite a few years ago, if you've flown Southwest, you know that they do this thing where their safety talks, they try to make them funny, right? So, and that's one of the things that they do on all of their flights. So someone was flying Southwest, they're sitting through this humorous safety talk, and they didn't find it humorous at all. So they wrote this letter to the company essentially saying, I disagree with how you guys are doing your safety talk. Safety is a very serious issue. You're not taking it seriously. And so the people at Southwest, they got this letter and they didn't know what to do with it. So the letter keeps getting pushed up the chain, up the chain, up the chain. Finally, the CEO of Southwest gets the letter, okay? And he mulls over it for a while and he responds, and he had a 3-word response. And his response to this customer was, "We'll miss you." Okay. And the point of the story is that they knew what their position was in the market. And they also knew that that person who thought they were a customer wasn't actually an ideal customer of Southwest. And they were okay with telling them, sorry, go fly somewhere else, because they're different. And somebody didn't appreciate that difference. And they said, okay, that's fine if you don't appreciate it. Other people do.
That's how I'm going to start greeting you from now on. Sorry, go fly somewhere else.
So let's dig into this. And I think it's best or easiest to learn this through the use of an example. And since this is Caffeinated Q&A, of course, we're going to pick a coffee shop example, right? We're kind of obligated to do that. So step 1 of the brand edges exercise is to list at least 4 of your primary competitors. Okay. So in this case, if I'm opening a coffee shop, I might pick Starbucks, I might pick Sheetz, and then let's just say coffee shop A, B, and C. And so you always have competitors. And I would say if you think you don't have any competitors, then you either don't understand your market or there's likely not a market for your product. Here's the mistake that we see all the time. People say, I don't have any competitors, okay? The problem is a competitor is not just someone that's selling the same product you're selling. There's somebody that is competing for the time and space in the consumer's mind that you are trying to occupy. So for example, let's say I'm opening a coffee shop, okay? Maybe Black Rifle's subscription service is a competitor for you, because when I get up in the morning, am I going to have my coffee at home or am I going to stop at your coffee shop on my way to work, right? And so when you're listing competitors, it's not just people that are competing in the same exact market, have the same store that you have. It's people that are competing for that space in the consumer's mind. Another example that I'll use is the Erie Philharmonic, and they understand this stuff. They get it. But Philharmonics across the country that don't, they make the mistake of saying, we're the only Philharmonic in our city, therefore we don't have any competitors. But your competitors are anybody that's that has an event on a Friday or Saturday night, because I might decide to go to an Otters game instead of the Erie Philharmonic. Therefore, the Erie Otters could be my competitor, right? Now, again, the Erie Philharmonic, we've talked to them, they get this stuff, but a lot of people don't. You have to understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to hold a position in the consumer's mind, okay?
So Netflix came out.
Yes.
CEO of Netflix was actually asked this question. There's been a definite rise in streaming services. For a while, it was only Netflix. And as like things like Disney Plus and all these other streaming services were announced, the CEO of Netflix was asked, like, are you worried about the competition now? He's like, no, my competition really, like, my primary competition is not these other streaming services. My primary competitor is sleep. And so that's someone who like very, very clearly knows what he's up against and how he's, trying to market himself against what people are doing. If you're going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, you're probably not binge watching Netflix, right? And so it's just a very, very fascinating example of like your competitors aren't necessarily a direct like product to product, company. It's anything that's competing with the time and attention of your customers.
Yes. And in the world we live in, there are tons of people and products and services competing for time and attention. So you always have competitors. Okay. Step 2 is going to be to create a list of what we call edges. And edges are just potential areas of uniqueness for a business. So they're really like characteristics of a business. So I listed some here as examples. So you could have value versus luxury. So right, like Kia versus Mercedes. You could have relational versus transactional, traditional versus innovative, low price and high price, kid-friendly, not kid-friendly, low quality, high quality. And so the key to this step is list as many edges as you can possibly think of. Our minds tend to go to the easy, tangible ones like price and quality. But there's also things like, what is the feel of your store versus the feel of some other competitor's store? There's tons of these. One of the resources that we're going to put out is a list of potential edges. Now, some edges are very industry specific. Some edges are general. And so we want to put out a list of these that you guys have to choose from. And other people have done it. You can search on the internet and probably find some. But the point here is more is better. You have to be able to think through all of these different edges to know where the market opportunities are. And you'll see why in a minute. So steps 3 and 4 are to create this axis that you see and to plot your competitors. So let me walk you through this. So the competitors are on the left there. We have Starbucks, Sheetz, coffee shops, A, B, and C. And we just created it. We just color coded them, right? Now on the right, we picked 2 of our edges and we plotted them on the axis. So we have transactional versus relational, and we have value versus luxury. So this is very subjective, but what we want to do is let's take Starbucks and figure out, is it a value brand or a luxury brand? So Starbucks is the green circle. For me, I would say that Starbucks leans more towards a luxury brand based on how their stores are designed, based on how they interact with customers. I think they're more of a luxury brand. Are they all the way on the edge of luxury? No, I don't think so. But I would say they're on the luxury side of the axis. On the other side, are they transactional or are they relational? Again, I would say that Starbucks, the green circle, they're more relational. The example I would use for that is I used to go to Starbucks to work before I had an office, and I would go there just about every day. And then I hadn't been there. I got my office and I wasn't there for about 6 months. When I went back to Starbucks, 2 of the baristas remembered my name, right? That does not happen at Sheetz, I can guarantee you, right? Because Starbucks strives to be very relational. They want to know their customers. They want to connect with their customers. So I would plot Starbucks, that green circle, in the relational luxury quadrant, okay? Now Sheetz, on the other hand, Sheetz, they sell on price. So when you look at the value versus luxury, they're very far on the value side of things. They sell a lot on price. And also relational versus transactional, as you guys can imagine, Sheetz is very transactional, right? They probably have 20 other people in line that are trying to pay for gas or food or whatever. So they're very transactional. They want you in, they're going to give you a cheap cup of coffee, and they're going to get you out of there. So they're all the way in the bottom left corner in the value-based, transactional-based cup of coffee. Now you can imagine another coffee shop like the Purple Circle where it's luxury and very relational. You can imagine a coffee shop that is luxury but transactional. So maybe some high-end district where people are not looking to have conversations, but they want an expensive cup of coffee because it makes them feel good. And you can also imagine another coffee shop like the Orange Circle where it's a little bit relational, but they also have pretty good prices, right? So what do I do with this once I plot my competitors, right? And you could plot 20 competitors on here if you wanted to, but what do I do after I plot them? Well, what I do is I look at the quadrants, and in this case, there is a competitor listed in every single quadrant, right? So the orange circle is in one quadrant, the green and purple are in one, the blue is in one, and the red is in one. What this tells us is there's no obvious market gap. So if I'm trying to position my brand, and I think that the uniqueness of my brand is that I'm relational, what this graph tells me is I'm actually wrong about that. There's not a market gap for relational coffee shops. Okay, so just purely being relational, I'm not saying you shouldn't take that route. That alone is not enough of a uniqueness to make you stand out in the market. Okay, let's look at a couple more edges. Okay, so now we're going to look at price. We'll look at low price versus high price, and we'll look at kid-friendly versus non-kid friendly. Again, we're using the same competitors. Let's look at Starbucks first, the green circle. Starbucks is not kid-friendly. They have high tables. Everything in there is hard, made of wood and metal, right? If you have kids, you know that is not a kid-friendly place. Also, if you've sat in a Starbucks and you've watched a mom try to wrestle with a kid while she has a cup of coffee, you'll realize Starbucks is not a kid-friendly place. So I would put them very far on the not kid-friendly side. On the price, they're fairly high price. So I would put them up in that quadrant where they're fairly high priced, right? So again, green circle, not kid-friendly, high price. Sheets is also not kid-friendly. It's not a place where you go and take your kids and hang out, but they're very low priced. So they're in that quadrant in the bottom right corner, right? Where they're low price, not kid-friendly. Again, you can imagine these other coffee shops that are the purple and the orange ones that are not really kid-friendly, but maybe you have one high price, one low price. And then you can imagine another place where it's kid-friendly and very high priced, like the blue circle is. So what does this axis tell us? This axis tells us that there's a market opportunity for a low price, kid-friendly coffee shop. Okay. Should you chase after creating a kid-friendly, low price coffee shop? I don't know. That's what you have to decide if you're planning on creating a coffee shop. But what this tells us is there is a market opportunity there. Whether you should try to realize that opportunity, that's up to you. But there is a market opportunity here.
Now, if you, let's say that you decide that, yes, I want to be a kid-friendly and a very affordable kind of low-price coffee shop. The goal is to get as close to that edge as possible. You don't want to be just like a little bit in that quadrant. You want to be definitively, like, without a doubt in that quadrant, because that's what's going to separate you from competitors. If you're just like kind of kid-friendly, it's not going to do much for you, but get as close to that edge as you possibly can.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing that is interesting here is this is where we talk about different. It would be very hard for you to convince me that Starbucks is kid-friendly, right? Now, so that's where different matters, right? It would be very hard for you to convince me that Sheets is kid-friendly. I can't argue with different. Now, how kid-friendly a place is, that's better, right? We could argue that all day and night. But when you say Starbucks is kid-friendly, that's very difficult to make that argument, right? So this is where different matters so much. Okay. So let's step through one more example here. And so again, we'll start with Starbucks, and the edges that I picked this time are traditional versus innovative. So I'm thinking in terms of coffee making methods. Are you just kind of, using a percolator or using some of these other, French press or some other innovative methods that I'm sure I don't even know about for creating coffee? And then on the other side, non-educational versus educational. Is your company one that teaches people about coffee and about how to make coffee? So Starbucks, I would say they're a little bit on the educational side because if you've gone in and talked to a barista, they're more than happy to tell you what they know about making coffee and temperatures and all of that stuff, right? Like they will help you, but they're probably not going to take an hour out of their day to train you on how to do it, right? So I'd say they're a little bit on the educational side. I would also say they're a little bit on a traditional side. They're a big company. It's difficult for them to continue to create, super innovative methods of making coffee. So I'd say they're probably, this is where I put them, again, subjective, in the educational traditional quadrant. Sheets, on the other hand, again, very traditional. Like you go in there, you're pouring your own cup of coffee. It's all made the same way, nothing fancy. And they're also not educational. I'm not sure how much they know about coffee, but I would bet if you go into Sheets and ask them to explain to you how you can at home make the best cup of coffee, they're probably going to tell you get out of line and let somebody else pay, right? It's just not their brand. And then you can imagine these other coffee companies where you could have somebody that's a traditional coffee company, but they'll teach you how to do it. You could have, that would be the orange circle. You could have this purple circle where they're very innovative, but they're not really concerned with teaching you how to do it. And then you could have this blue circle where it's somewhere non-educational, traditional, which is where a lot of coffee shops fall. So again, what you recognize is there's a market opportunity for an educational, innovative coffee shop, right? So a coffee shop that is using the most innovative methods to make coffee, and they're training people that come in that want to learn how to make the best cup of coffee, right? They're teaching them about coffee, about the coffee beans, about roasting, about making the cup of coffee. So there's an opportunity in the market for a company like that, okay? So what does this tell us? What is the point? Let's get to the point here. So the point is, based on our analysis, and again, we didn't do nearly enough edges, but here, just as an example, we did a few. Based on our analysis, there's an opportunity in the market for a low-priced, kid-friendly, innovative, educational coffee shop. Should you go build that today? I don't know. That's, again, for the business to answer. This exercise does not tell you what to build. It just tells you where the opportunities are to go build something. And again, it's very hard to argue with different. So I would say it would be very difficult, unless I missed a competitor, which is an option, for you to argue that there's not an opportunity here. Okay, because these axes help us discover different. Now, this exercise, it's not easy. Okay, we've been through it dozens of times. It's not easy. It's not easy to do for our company. It's not easy to do with our clients, because it's hard work and you have to think, right? I tell you guys all the time, like, the hard work of thinking is what people avoid. It's really hard to come up with those edges. Here's what I think the hard parts are of this exercise. One, defining the edges to use. Again, there's no playbook for this. We're going to create a list of them that you have to choose from, but the edges that are applicable to your industry, you have to figure that out, right? This is what we help clients figure out. The second thing that's really hard is you have to be honest about what your competitors are good at. We tend to think, oh, our company is really good at this and we're better than our competitors. We have to be honest about what our competitors are good at. If our competitors are going to crush us in price all day and night, that's okay. Knowing it is super valuable, right? If our competitors are just really good, like they have super high quality coffee and we don't know how we're going to be able to compete with them, that's okay. You have to be honest about what your competitors are good at. And then the third thing is you have to be honest about what you're good at. And this is where, just because there's an opportunity there doesn't mean that you're the one to step into it. Now, if the opportunity, what you're looking for is the overlap between an opportunity in the market and something that you think you can do really well. That is what leads to a brand that sees immense success, right? Opportunity in the market combined with what your core strengths are. That is what you're looking for. Very difficult to find. This is hard work, guys. It's the reason people avoid this stuff. So the question for you guys is, if you're running a business or part of a business, do you know what your position is in the market? Do you know your uniqueness? Do you know where your competitors are? Do you know what market opportunities exist? Or are you out there every day just struggling, fighting, trying to sell some more products, and you're not even aware that your competitors are in the same exact quadrant as you, and you're positioning yourself directly against them as opposed to different from them?
So I think one of the hard parts is defining the edge. But if you get stuck there, I think something that's kind of helped us a little bit is think about what's important to your customer. So if you're showing up to a coffee shop, is cost important to the people shopping there, right? Mm-hmm. What's important to the people that you're trying to serve? I think the other thing is, like, be careful about the words that you choose to put on the axes to do, like, the extremes. So if cost is important, I would caution against using words like cheap versus expensive, because naturally it's going to be like, well, no one wants expensive stuff. Like, expensive has a negative connotation to it. But if you choose words like value versus luxury, then it's clear there is a clear market for like luxury, products and services. And so I think just, being a wordsmith a little bit is kind of critical to really diving into this exercise a little bit.
Yeah, this is not an exercise that is good to do quickly. This is one that is a methodical exercise. You have to put thought into it. It's really good to work on this. What I found is to step away from it for a little while, step away from it for a day or a few hours and come back to it and dig in again. And there's just a lot of thinking that needs to go into this because there's no right or wrong answer, right? This is just discovery, and discovery is always difficult because you never know when it's done. And so, it's super valuable. And guys, two things. One, knowing where you fit is defined by what your brand is. So again, brand positioning falls into the second phase of how we do brand. And so the first phase is really defining what your brand is, your brand values, and your brand story, and what is core to your brand. That then leads into this. So when you see an opportunity in the market, you can say, okay, are we the brand that believes that that's right? So for example, if we believe if we believe as one of our brand values that we will refuse to put out anything less than the best quality product, then when I'm looking at my brand edges, if there's an opportunity for lower quality, lower cost product, I know that might be a market opportunity. It might be a fantastic market opportunity. It's not one that our business is willing to step into. And the other thing is, I forgot what the second thing was. Oh, I hate being
how amazing your employees are.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yes, that's it. Oh, it's going to come back to me like 5 minutes after this is over. I know. But yeah, it's really important to understand what your brand stands for, what your brand believes in before you can go do this positioning exercise. So if you guys have questions about this, let us know. If you haven't want to put them in the chat, you can. If you want to reach out to us directly, please feel free. We find this so valuable for our customers. I remember now what the second thing was. When you know your brand positioning, when you know what your position is in the market, the messaging that you use to reach your target client becomes so much easier. Because if I know that we are the kid-friendly coffee shop, right? The kid-friendly coffee shop, that message can be that's the message we put out into the world. And we know that message is unique because we did this analysis. So we know that our competitors can't say, they can say we're kid-friendly too, but they don't actually have the brand to back it up, right? So this positioning exercise, so you can see how all this works. You do your brand, you figure out your brand values, you transition into some of these other exercises like this, where you're figuring out what your position and uniqueness is in the market. And that leads into what messaging do you use in your marketing material. And again, guys, this is where it's really difficult. If you say, what is our messaging? What should our ad say today? Well, I don't know. I don't know what your ad should say today. If you haven't done this brand work, what do you say about your brand? If you've done the brand work, it's very easy. What do you tell the market? You tell them what your uniqueness is. And they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it. Either one is fine, but you will know who your customers are, right? So guys, I hope this is helpful. Again, we'll put out some resources. We'll share this presentation as well as some of the edges and some other things that we come up with in the email that goes out next Monday. If you have questions, again, reach out to us on Facebook. You can contact us through our website, whatever you need to do to get a hold of us. We'd be more than happy to help you guys through this. The other thing is Friday, we have I'm excited about the show we're going to have on Friday. We are going to have Brandon Wiley from Opened Eyes on. With this racial tension that is kind of bubbling over here in our country, we've had quite a few businesses ask us the question, like, how do I respond to this, right? Like, how do I respond? What do I say when somebody writes to me, when a customer writes to me and asks me a question about what my stance is on this? And so Brandon runs a company called Opened Eyes, where he really digs into raising diversity awareness and into creating cultural unity, right? And so we're going to have him on the show in the context of how do you address all of this stuff as a business, and how should we be thinking about it as business owners, and what's the right way to go about it. And so we're really gonna pick Brandon's brain about it, and we're gonna have some really interesting conversations. Brandon and I talked on the phone the other day, and we both said, like, we're not afraid of difficult conversations. We really want this to be a kind of honest, transparent, possibly difficult conversation, because this is important stuff. So I'm super excited for the show on Friday. I think it's going to be very helpful to help businesses navigate the kind of racial tension that we're dealing with right now, and do it in a way that builds people up, right? Because that's really what we need to do. So I'm looking forward to that on Friday. So I hope you'll join us on Friday at 9 a.m. Again, guys, go to ghostcreative.com/live, sign up for the email list, and we hope to see you guys on Friday at 9 a.m. right here on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.